Hey everyone, it's John here, and in this video, I'd like to share with you the 5 most common mistakes people make when looking to launch their own recruiting business. And these insights I've gathered over the last 6 years doing nothing but helping people start their own recruiting businesses, even if they have a 9-to-5 job or they don't have any prior recruiting experience. So my hope is that by watching this video, you'll skip these common mistakes and be well on your way to launching your recruiting business, getting your first few clients, and making your first $20,000 placement sooner than later. All right, so let's jump right in. Mistake number 1 is the niche. Most people don't have one, or they pick the wrong niche when they launch their recruiting business. And this is very common when I talk to experienced recruiters because they tend to have recruited across a wide variety of different industries. And so naturally, it's hard for them to pick a lane. And they're also afraid that they might pigeonhole themselves in one niche and miss out on other opportunities, miss out on new clients. But the fact of the matter is, hiring managers, they want to work with specialists. Just like the same way if you had an acute pain in your ear, you want to see the ear doctor at the hospital, not the general practitioner. And hiring managers want to speak with recruiters who really deeply understand the positions they're hiring for. They really understand the requirements and they understand like their world versus a generalist that can say, hey, I can fill any role throughout your organization, right? That's not very compelling to them. When you have a niche that's going to increase your response rate, increase the chances of you booking a call with a potential client, and then on that call, really, again, coming across as a subject matter expert in that vertical. So that's why having a niche is so important. The best way we found to pick a niche is to really identify areas where you've done placements in the past if you've been a recruiter. If you're not a recruiter, don't worry. Then you want to think of more where you might have industry expertise, right? You want to leverage either your industry expertise, some type of subject matter background that you have, or where you've recruited really well. And that's kind of like your proficiency. And then you overlay that with what the market's demanding. You look at candidate supply and you look at your passions, right? Roles you want to fill, because that passion will come across when you speak with hiring managers. Obviously, this is just kind of covering it at a high level. We do take every private client I work with through a niche discovery process. But even if you just think about this at a high level and start to narrow in your focus, you're going to do a lot better. Please don't skip that. And please put some thought into your niche before you just launch out into the market. All right, mistake number 2 is client targeting. A lot of times when I talk to people who are looking to start their recruiting business, their plan of attack for getting clients is to rely on their current network on LinkedIn, maybe target local businesses or look at job boards. And they'll just often every day wake up in the morning and look at all the new jobs being posted and start reaching out to people who posted those jobs. But if you're doing that, and if that's what you're relying on, you're basically fishing in a crowded pond because every recruiting agency is targeting those local job boards. And if you're looking to work with just local businesses, it's a very small market. And again, relying on your network is great to start because, I mean, let's face it, it's low-hanging fruit. If someone knows you, they like you, they trust you already, definitely tap your network. But if you're doing that, you probably already found out that the low-hanging fruit dries up really fast. And if you don't have a way to basically pull a lever and start generating calls with new potential clients who want to speak with you, then you're always going to run into the challenge of not having enough clients. And if you've been recruiting for a while, you already know that it's the new clients with the fresh job orders that close the fastest, not the stale job orders that have been open for months and months. But you keep submitting candidates hoping that by miracle, your client will eventually hire somebody. That's not a good way to grow your recruiting business. So really the optimal way to get new clients is to cast a wide net and target the entire country in your niche. And really the way that you do that is step 1, build a list on LinkedIn with your ideal companies in your niche, hiring for roles in your specific niche. Then step 2 is target companies that are in the small to medium-sized business, SMBs. Roughly 50 to 500 employees, depending on your niche, because these small to medium-sized companies have the biggest hiring pains that you can solve. They typically have one HR person doing all the jobs, including posting job ads and hoping to find the right resume. And their hope is that they'll post an ad on Indeed, LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, and the perfect candidate from their competitor will apply to work there. But that's not the case, right? More often than not, 95% of the applicants are not qualified and they're just buried in work, sifting through resumes. and their VPs are giving them pressure on finding the right employees, the right people to interview, and then that's where you come in. Again, by being specialized in your niche, you're well positioned to help them solve those hiring pains. If you target companies that are too big, like Fortune 500 companies, they probably have an internal team of recruiters. When I worked at Google, I mean, there was an entire floor of recruiters and recruiting pods everywhere. So as you can imagine, like they already have tons and tons of internal recruiting resources. However, if you target small, scrappy startups, yes, you can reach the decision maker very easily, but they typically can't afford your fees, or they might not be growing enough to really hire from you. They might hire one person and never hire from you again. So if you target the sweet spot here, 50 to 500 employees, you have the best shot at getting traction and again, booking a call with the hiring manager. All right, mistake number 3 is messaging, right? What do you send to a potential client to get them to stop what they're doing, read your message, and reply? If you're a recruiter or you're a working professional, you tend to write good messages that are clear, professional, well written, and really describe the service you want to offer. The problem is, if you're not careful, your message will probably look like every other recruiting vendor out there that's reached out to the hiring manager that week or that day. If a hiring manager sees you as similar to everyone else, you're probably going to get lost in the noise, be put in the same bucket as everyone else, and they might see you as a commodity. And unfortunately, if you're seen as a commodity, the only way to compete is by being the lowest price option, and no one wants to play that game, right? That's not a winning strategy. So, the best way to really send messages is, again, starting with your niche, because if they see that you're a specialist, they're going to trust that you can solve their hiring pain more than a generalist recruiter. And also, if your message can market a candidate, a specific candidate, it makes it a lot stronger. Because generally speaking, messages come in the form of two shapes and forms: a service offering and a candidate offering. So a service offering is essentially saying, "Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager. We've never spoken before, but I specialize in your roles that you're hiring for. I'm sure I can help you. Can I book some time on your calendar and ask you a bunch of questions about your hiring pains so I can offer you my services?" That's the service offering. That's what 95% of recruiting vendors do and what they say to hiring managers. Instead, we want to offer a specific candidate. Right? This is called candidate marketing. And you know this if you've been recruiting at an agency for a while, where you're actually bringing value up front to the table by saying, "Hi, first name. We never spoken before, but I just met a candidate who fits the requirements of this position that you just posted. They have these skills, subject matter expertise in these areas, and they have these certifications. They work at your competitor currently, and they're just starting to look for new opportunities. They're very familiar with your team and ask me if I can help broker an introduction. Let me know if you'd like to see their resume." Now, if you are the hiring manager, which message will resonate more with you? Which message would compel you to reply? Most likely the candidate message, because you're dangling a very attractive carrot in front of them. And the hiring manager, if they're experiencing hiring pain and if they're having trouble finding people for that role, they're more likely to reply at least with something like, "Sure, send me their resume," and you can get the conversation started from there. Mistake number 4 is sending the messages. Most people make the mistake of sending messages manually. They try to carve out 1 to maybe 3 hours a day if they're lucky to just do nothing but handwrite emails, LinkedIn messages, connection requests, follow messages, phone calls, voicemails, text messages. It sounds tiring even saying all of that. And doing it is exhausting and not sustainable over time. Let's face it, the moment that you get a client that gives you 2 or 3 job orders, you're going to pause business development and instead focus on filling the roles that you just got. Because all recruiters are taught the same thing from day one, which is focus on what's closest to the dollar, at least in the agency world. Which means if you have the option of spending time working with a candidate who's in final round interviews to help them get the job offer, or spending time trying to get a new client to book a call with you, you're going to spend time on that candidate in third round interviews because they're so much closer to getting paid, right? Closest to the dollar. But the smart way and the most kind of like not short-sighted way is to focus on what's furthest from the dollar, right? By focusing on what's furthest from the dollar, which is reaching out to new clients, you're going to be always making sure that your funnel, your pipeline is full of meetings with clients, right? So let me ask you a question. If you are serious about starting your own recruiting business, Just look at your calendar over the next 30 days and see how many calls do you have booked with a hiring manager who wants to talk to you about your services or how you can help them. If you're like most people, the answer is 0, maybe 1, but it's usually 0. And that's totally normal because, again, this is difficult work, right? You have to then reach out to a lot of people manually if you want to move the needle. The smart way to do it and the solution is to automate your reach outs by leveraging LinkedIn automation or email automation, ideally both, and have those messages that are very specific, offering a candidate in your niche. See kind of, how we're connecting all the dots here, right? You take a message where you're focused on your niche, you're offering a candidate with subject matter expertise, and you're saying that message that you would normally write by hand, but you load it into an automated sequence with follow-ups, and that goes out on autopilot every single day in the background. And that way your workflow is you just go about your day doing your job, and then periodically check your LinkedIn inbox and see which hiring manager basically raises their hand and say, hey, I'd like to learn more. Let's talk, right? What are your fees? They'll ask you a number of questions, but they'll express interest, and then you'll just nurture that conversation and move them to a call where you can then have a conversation. So leveraging automation is the way to go, but I think the trap most people fall into is picking the wrong tool, not knowing the technical setup, and again, it can be tricky if you are not quite tech savvy. So again, it helps to have help when leveraging LinkedIn automation. Finally, mistake number 5 is personal branding. If you do all this stuff right, what tends to happen is this, right? I think it's best explained if you put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager. So they're going about their day, they get a notification on LinkedIn, new message, they open it, it's a recruiter, or actually they see your name, they don't even know that you're a recruiter. They see your name and they see your message, but they read your message, and if you did it right and you follow this process, your message should be really soaked with value, ideally highlighting a candidate that you're working with that fits their needs, has all the requirements met they're looking for, works for one of their competitors, and they're familiar with their company. Now, what are they going to do next, the hiring manager? They're going to be, well, I like this message, but before I reply, let me just click on this person's name. Like, who is this person? They click on your name, and what are they going to see? Your LinkedIn profile. And just like every other recruiter, they're going to do a quick 3-second glance at your profile and see if you're the real deal. They'll see if you're professional, and if your LinkedIn profile doesn't quite look right, the message you're saying in the connection request is different than the copy on your LinkedIn profile, and they're getting confused. And if they have to work too hard to connect the dots, they're going to be like, oh, this doesn't quite make sense, or this seems kind of like not really dialed in or polished, and they might just ignore your message. So for that reason, personal branding is super important. And so by personal branding, I mean your LinkedIn profile needs to be optimized. Your LinkedIn company page, if they peek at that, should be really dialed in. And if they look at your website, it should also reflect everything you've been saying in your message. So in other words, your LinkedIn message, your LinkedIn profile, company page, and website should all be aligned with your niche, your message, and who you serve. And when there's alignment, that creates so much trust. Now, all of a sudden, the hiring manager will say, wow, this person's the real deal. If this is all they do, they must be good at it. So let me reply back, hey, tell me more, right? You'll get a response if that's aligned. So those are the 5 most common mistakes. And if I were you, I would, again, recommend that you dial each of those in. And once you've dialed in those 5 areas, you'll be in a much stronger position to take action when launching your recruiting business. But the next question is, okay, well, now that you know the mistakes to avoid, what are the step-by-step kind of checklist to kind of check off as you go along? So I have a video coming up where I'm going to walk you through this exact checklist of exactly what you need to check off when launching your recruiting business. If it's already up, you'll see that in the corner of my screen in a moment. But otherwise, just follow those steps. I made all these mistakes on my own, so I'm trying to share this with you again to make your life easier and give you a much better time with your recruiting business, so that way you can move forward with confidence. Again, thanks for checking out this video. Hope you got some value, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye now.